Welcome, everyone. I'm Glen Howard, president of the Jamestown Foundation. We're happy that you're joining us for another episode of Eastern Approaches, the interview series named after the famous book of the same name by former British diplomat, spy, and adventurer Sir Fitzroy Maclean. Each episode of Jamestown's Eastern Approaches features conversations with renowned experts on the most important geostrategic issues facing the United States and Eurasia, particularly those areas of Eurasia often missing in today's headlines. Today, that is not necessarily the case, as we're focusing on an event actually in the global headlines, and that is Ukraine. For the past month, we've been witnessing an unprecedented Russian military buildup against Ukraine that has focused U.S. attention on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Many of us are wondering whether we can breathe a little bit easier now that Russian President Putin has apparently given the order for Russian forces to stand down. Or did he? Should we breathe a little bit easier now that President Zelensky is seeking a meeting with Putin somewhere in Europe, or do we need to remain vigilant as ever? To examine these events and how to make sense of the Russian military buildup and what exactly Putin is up to against Ukraine, we're speaking with retired Admiral Ihor Kabanenko of the Ukrainian Navy. Admiral Kabanenko is one of the leading experts on Black Sea security and is someone who closely watches every Russian move in the Black Sea region. He's also a frequent contributor to the Jamestown publication Eurasia Daily Monitor and just wrote a piece in the April 27 issue of EDM that we highly recommend to those of you who are watching this interview today. Admiral Kabanenko has worked in a variety of different positions in the Ukrainian government. As a Deputy Minister of Defense in 2014, he witnessed the Russian invasion of Crimea from inside the Ukrainian government. He has a wealth of expertise, and we very much appreciate that he's joining us today. So, thank you for joining us, Admiral Kabanenko.
Thank you for the invitation. Nice to see you again.
It's great to see you. So give us your estimate about what do you think we've been witnessing for the last 2 weeks, a major Russian buildup. So tell us what has happened against Ukraine, and why does it appear that Russia is announcing on the one hand that it's standing down its military forces, but then again, it doesn't really seem so clear that he actually is doing that. So what is Russia planning to do? So why didn't they attack Ukraine? Tell us.
Yeah, there are good questions. Thank you. And obviously, such a massive redeployment of troops, of Russian troops, was not for military exercises as it was previously announced by Russian Minister of Defense. I think this build-up, first of all, was aimed to demonstrate Kremlin's abilities to quite quickly redeploy its offensive troops and forces in the western direction with, I would stress, with their real readiness for combat actions. Here is the question whose attention is primarily, according to Russian plans, to show Moscow's military capabilities to the West, or to show its own population a forceful dictate towards the West. Secondly, I think during this redeployment, Russia significantly strengthened its inter-service offensive forces in Crimea. And thirdly, Moscow tested Ukraine's and West's vulnerabilities. In my opinion, lessons what will be learned by Kremlin in mentioned three aspects may be decisive in its further actions. Why didn't they attack? Shrinking what they concentrated huge number of offensive forces, troops in occupied Crimea and in adjacent sea waters. Russian troops ratio were achieved 10-1 on Russian favor, but they didn't attack. I believe the plan was to demonstrate Russia's ability to move quickly, get very close to the red lines, and attack if situation is favorable. Probably the real situation was not so favorable as Kremlin counted, or some political aspects influenced on this. Such as in demonstration of military might, Kremlin found much more benefits to Putin's party before the new election, rather than fight in combat. It should be noted that Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu said on Tuesday that Russia had not pulled back forces because of external pressure. It means fictional NATO threat. Let me stress that in this situation, it is important not to think what all of this is a Russian military demonstration only, which can end with some kind of military provocation, nothing more. If we think so, it is very likely what we will miss a key moment when the enemy suddenly and strongly attack. In this respect, strategic surprise from Russian side should not be allowed.
There's a lot of speculation that Russian forces were poised, obviously, in a very offensive disposition, and so you've been kind of unsure about whether Russia was really going to do something, whether they were poised for action. What exactly were they? What was the buildup designed to do? You were kind of convinced that the Russians really were poised to do something. You've long argued that the North Crimean Canal would obviously be a potential target, but you also indicated that Putin was kind of trying to use, as we use the term, offer bait for Ukraine, trying to show the rest of the world that Ukraine was going to maybe do something preemptively to try to attack Russia and Russian forces in Donbass. So was he offering the bait on the fish hook to Ukraine, trying to see if Ukraine was doing so, or was he kind of testing your readiness of Ukraine's how the West would react, and also how President Zelensky would act?
I believe what it was a lot of things, and of course, Russia, from my perspective, used some kind of maskirovka, some kind of military activities, movements, and so on, to demonstrate ability, as I stressed before, to fight, and if situation will be favorable, attack vulnerable places of Ukraine. First of all, I think if we will look on architecture of Russian forces, I think first priority was to attack from Crimea and adjacent sea waters. Usage of some kind of amphibious operations, airborne operations, and so special operation forces actions, and so on. This was aimed to occupy Kherson Oblast, from my perspective, because
so you think it would have been a limited offensive designed with a specific political nature of trying to embarrass Ukraine militarily? Is that kind of what you think they were?
Sure. We can find a very interesting aspect in such redeployment. In eastern direction, it was not so much ready on Russian favor. It was less than 3 times. So it was not enough for offensive operation, for strategic operation, for Russian strategic operation. But in south direction, it was 10-1. So it was a real preparation, real demonstration. It was there are different echelons of preparation for offensive operation with different types of forces: airborne, Marines, land forces, aviation, including transport aviation and strike aviation, landing ships also deployed from Northern Fleet and Caspian Flotilla. So it was a huge number of forces prepared and trained for attack from south. I think we should count those aspects. And in current situation, the situation in Crimea has not changed much since last Thursday, when it was announced what Russia will pull out their forces. Russian forces still continue to stay in Apuk, in Angarsky training ranges, in Crimea, Donuslav Lake, in
And
peninsula.
let me interrupt. Why are those areas in Opuk and Angarsky? Why are these areas so important for the Russians? I mean, are these part of a Normandy style offensive amphibious operations that they could mount from that area? Why is that area so important to the Russians in terms of a potential attack on Ukraine?
Apuk is both Angarsky and Apuk training ranges are important for Russian deployment because they are out of cities, villages, and other places with huge amount of civilian persons, civilian citizens, and also they equipped for training, for stay of forces there, troops there. Apuk is a very interesting place because if you would look on history, on the Crimean history during the Second World War, we can find what this area is very good for troops deploying before amphibious operation in the direction of the Sea of Azov and also in the direction in Black Sea, because it's a good places for troops landing on ships and so on. And also for training, I think. And also it's a fields there. They have roads with possibility to supply there for logistics support and so on. So it's there are prepared the areas for especially for troops. So and also naval bases, airfields, different airfields in different parts of Crimea are also military airfields. Also the very good places for jump, let's say, in the north direction from Crimea. So I think and also landing ships. I think it's important what we should count at landing ships deployed from Russian naval fleet. Yesterday they were put to sea for drills. So this process is still continuous. It's no changes.
So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, sure.
So on the one hand, Shoigu has said they're standing down, but then on the other hand, you still see forces maintaining a level of readiness, and you still see levels of exercises by the Russians in the Black Sea. So I want to ask, we saw in the news that they brought landing craft through the Caspian Volga-Don Canal, and you also saw landing craft that were brought all the way from the Russian Baltic Fleet to the Black Sea. But some of those landing craft broke down. They had to have repairs in Tartus. And some people have argued that if Putin really was ready to wage a war against Ukraine or do something militarily, that those landing craft would have been in excellent maintenance conditions. They would have been ready to go. And that kind of led some analysts in Ukraine to think maybe they weren't ready to do something. Otherwise, this equipment would have been battle readiness conditions. So that it was almost like Putin was conceptualizing, intimidating Ukraine, waving his saber in a way to show the West that Ukraine would not be able to defend itself. What do you make of some of the way that these forces were sent to the Black Sea and their readiness levels? Is that, you think that, was it a test of sorts?
Yes, sure. And also, this is because we should not only count of some kind of Normandy style of amphibious operation based on force, let's say, approach. We also should count some kind of based on surprise factor amphibious operation. And I think here is this approach that Russia tried to train and also demonstrate. Why? Because Ukraine has a lot of landing a lot of places on its coast and in the Sea of Azov and in the Black Sea, which is possible to land forces from sea based on such platforms like was deployed in the Black Sea, including landing boats, small boats from Caspian flotilla. And you know, in military art, it's very difficult to cover all huge coastline by landing forces for anti-amphibious actions, because amphibious forces, they have very maneuverable, and they have more speed, more maneuverable capabilities, abilities. And of course, Russians will know very well know what Ukraine has limited capabilities at sea, and this situation is really favorable for Russia. And Russia, this is some kind of Ukraine's vulnerability, what Ukraine should, as soon as possible, eliminate and create its capabilities, naval capabilities to fight at sea. So Russia understands this very well, and plan some actions, train some actions, and of course, I think this way of training and preparation by Russian side will continue.
Well, there's some parts of the Sea of Azov, and kind of walk through the geography and the terrain of the Sea of Azov for your forces in Ukraine. Parts of the Sea of Azov on the Ukrainian shoreline have very high 50-meter cliffs. So there's a certain view that Ukraine can deter a Russian assault because of those cliffs. And therefore, that's why they need their airborne forces to land behind Ukrainian lines. Ukraine will rely on its 152-millimeter long-range artillery to try to deter a Russian Normandy type of assault, which there's only a few places, if I'm correct, right, in the Sea of Azov where Russia can land, where there are certain rivers that the beaches are very flat, and they can wage that type of assault. Is that correct?
They have several such places, from Berdyansk up to Genichisk, several places that it's possible to land up to platoon and battalion forces. And so some places it's not, in some places it's not possible to land forces, to land Russian forces. And of course, these are some obstacles for their ambitions. But we have several places there. More places we have in the Black Sea, in Charkov, let's say, area in the south, on the south of Charkov, and also this is where there are areas which connected with Kherson Oblast, and of course in south and Bessarabia.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because you're basically saying that you from Crimea in attacking Ukraine, Russia has a variety of options and of where it can attack the Sea of Azov, and then you point out the Ochakov is also a very vulnerable place. That's also where the Ukrainian Navy has some of its headquarters, and establishing a radar there, I believe, and it's also close to the Dnieper river. So, and the water supply is in Crimea. So they've got a lot of options. And then, but the Ukrainian army is not it's not the army you were seeing in 2014. I mean, Ukraine has definitely made some progress with its military. That it's not the same army that it was in 2014. I mean, they have acquired new weaponry, new equipment. So it will not be easy for the Russians to kind of mount an attack on Ukraine from the south. But then again, it's a very wide tactical front for the Russians. So they have a lot of options. Is that?
Yeah, sure.
And go ahead. So do you, so kind of tell us, what is it? So most observers would think that Ukraine probably has a decent sized navy, that it can repel or has some type of naval forces to repel an assault, but they really don't. So can you tell us a little bit the disposition of what Ukraine has in terms of naval forces?
Yeah, Ukraine also, you mentioned what armed forces today is it's a big difference with what we had in 2014. It's true, but mostly now Ukrainian armed forces in the south direction, only based on in the south direction have only land-based capabilities. So there are several units were deployed. They are trained for particular for such activities, anti-amphibious activities, and of course this is good improvement. But also it's a big question, still a big question for us. It's capable naval forces, because well known what we lost in Crimea, most part of our navy. And
70%, right? You lost 70% of the Ukrainian Navy.
Yes,
was lost in...
sure, 70% of Ukrainian naval forces. And in this regard, I would stress what it is very important to continue U.S. military technical assistance to Ukraine, because the United States made a very important decision to help Ukraine in its mosquito fleet creation. I would stress it's critically important. In the near future, next 3 island-class patrol boats will be transferred to Ukraine, and Ukrainian sailors are looking forward to take modern multi-purpose Mark 6 boats. At the same time, mosquito combat approach means not just naval platforms only. They are strong enough as an asymmetric combat system if an appropriate set of capabilities provided. And this regard, from my perspective, coastal-based anti-ship missiles, NSM, naval strike missiles, or for example, naval C2 system, for example, six syntax, synopsis, and tactical drones such as Coyote or others are critically important for capable mosquito fleet creation. From my perspective, such a mosquito system can complement the US capabilities in the Black Sea to deter maritime threats. So we are looking forward to get more aid from the US in this regard, because it's not possible for Ukraine to fight to deter Russia symmetrically. It's
non-existent.
Yeah,
it's almost non-existent. I mean,
yeah, because they have a lot. So it's only way to provide asymmetric, to create asymmetric approach, asymmetric deterrence. So in this regard, I think we can a lot of work here in this field to in creation of asymmetric capabilities. I absolutely agree with the experts who think what we should base these capabilities on our available resources, not just think about, not dream about such big platforms, which is not possible to build and also to maintain.
I think what you're politely hinting at is in the Zelensky government, the current Minister of Defense has been favoring a redevelopment of Nikolaev port facility to build a series of corvettes, of warships that will take 20 years to build, but the threat is immediate and you need something right away. And obviously for political reasons, they want to do this in Nikolaev to create jobs. Now it's my understanding that in Odessa, you have 2 island-class patrol boats that the United States has given to Ukraine that are guarding the harbor there. Odessa provides 1/3 of the GDP for the Ukrainian economy, but you only have 2 island-class boats and what, a handful of Gurza gunboats? Is that, and you have 3 more islands on the way. Is that the current state of what we have defending Odessa?
Yes, we have, again, I would say we have a very limited capabilities at sea. Yes, couple island class patrol boats, We have there also other artillery boats, medium-sized landing ship, one landing ship, and also flagman of Ukrainian Navy as a frigate, Getman Sagaidaishny. So it's not enough.
It still sits in port. It's not seaworthy, is it?
Yeah. And also several gunboats, Gurza class, couple of them were deployed in the Sea of Azov. So it's not enough because we have a huge coastline, we have tasks in littoral waters. I think it should be a center of gravity to provide security and defense in littoral waters, Ukraine's littoral waters, because a lot of threats were created particularly there. And in this regard, we should find a balance between tasks, capabilities needed to carry out all needed missions, and of course resources, allocated available resources. Because if you will only dream about some capabilities, huge capabilities, and with conditions of limited resources, I think it would be nothing. And of course, we have experience of such dreams in the past, and we should avoid, should learn those lessons and avoid such mistakes in the future.
You've spoken about, you briefly mentioned the mosquito fleet concept, and please briefly describe what was the vision for this mosquito fleet, and why is the Mark VI fast attack boat so important to this strategy? Because the United States and the $125 million that it recently gave Ukraine and as part of its defense disbursement, there are two MK6 boats in that package. So, but I don't believe, I'm not sure if they're going to be armed or not, but why are those, why is the MK6, what is your, why is the mosquito fleet so important? You keep referring to it giving you Ukraine asymmetric capabilities.
Yeah, mosquito fleet is a way to provide asymmetric approach. And this is effective operational approach to which allows not only to provide some response, but provide deterrence, which is also very important for us. But mosquito fleet, I would stress again what mosquito fleet is. It is not only some kind of boats, platforms. It means platforms equipped by short-range missiles and other artillery and other equipment fast enough to win in some battles, in some fight from different directions. So and also the Navy, based on this approach, or fleet based on this approach, has a lot of such platforms. More than 30, 35, 33, and so on. And mosquito platforms, mosquito naval platforms, the first stage of creation of mosquito fleet should include at least three types of platform. Patrol boats, like island-class patrol boats. It's a forward presence. It's a first echelon to clarify situation, to provide presence and key nodes, important areas, to provide freedom of navigation and so on. Second echelon means Mark VI multipurpose boats. For example, presence of multipurpose boats in Odessa with special operation forces on board would be very, very, very effective deterrence to avoid occupation of Serpent Island, very important island in the vicinity of Danube River entrance, as well as missile boats with long hand capabilities.
The Mark VIs are, the reason they're so important is compare their capabilities to the Gurzas. The Gurzas have a maximum speed of what? 23 knots, whereas the Mark VIs are
22.
the Mark VIs
45.
have a speed. can hit up 45. So basically, you know, the Mark 6s are basically Ferraris compared to the Volga. So this is quite, gives you some operational capabilities. And these boats, even if you have two of them, would also complicate Russian strategic planning. Is that correct? I mean, they give you a lot of options. They're also seaworthy.
Yes. Now it's up to 8 on the agenda of the U.S. military technical assistance of Ukraine, and those capabilities are very, very critical, very important for Ukraine. If such amount of Mark 6 will be deployed in Ukraine, but I think from my perspective, from my calculation, I think Ukraine needs at least 18 Mark 6 boats for both theaters, for the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Also range up to 180, 200 kilometers, which can provide deterrence mission, and also to strike, to provide real strike if necessary in real combat. So those three echelons is with all platforms, with all equipment and weapon on board of such platforms, also with a good system of situation and maritime domain situation awareness, as well as with air capabilities based on drones. I think this is a way, this is the best way and a cost-effective way to provide needed capabilities for our naval forces in this concrete situation at sea.
And so, you know, going to the Mark 6s, and then we talk about the Gurzas, which are basically very slow vessels. They're gunboats. They're not seaworthy type of naval craft. So the Mark 6s and the islands give you some capabilities. Now, up until recently, as of March 2021, the United States was sending Arleigh Burke-class destroyers to Odessa for military deployment. And we saw the Biden administration, unfortunately, did not send destroyers. They ordered them back, the DDGs back to Crete. So the U.S. naval protection of Odessa and NATO's Western protection is very, very critical and very important to the defense of Odessa, because these type of destroyers, the DDGs, have long-range radar. They also carry cruise missiles. I mean, they're very, very useful in deterring any potential Russian action. So this is something that also is affecting you, and I know you're looking forward to a U.S. and also British participation in the Black Sea. But recently, Shoigu said that the military exercises for Russian Crimea are now shifting to naval live firing exercises. Can you explain to our audience, as Russia continues this type of naval activity in the Black Sea, why are you worried about that? What does it say when they tell everybody that we're conducting live firing exercises in the Black Sea until October? What type of message is this sending to the West?
Yeah, you mentioned about the U.S. destroyers, and I think what the U.S. naval presents is key to keep maritime security safe. And in this regard, I propose to use all quotas of Montreux Convention for the U.S. naval forces forward, which to conduct joint drills with Ukrainian coasts in terms of, for example, maritime domain awareness, no-flight zone creation, and so on. It's analyzing what happened in the past weeks and today's Moscow statement, what Russia holds naval drills as a U.S. vessel moves to the Black Sea. We can conclude what Kremlin is moving ahead and will do everything possible to squeeze the United States out of the region. I think this situation's development should carefully monitor. But again, I again would stress what the U.S. naval presents as key for the region to keep balance of forces, to maintain secure situation secure in the region.
today, you know, the U.S. announced it's sending a U.S.
I think
Coast Guard cutter to the Black Sea, the USS Dallas, a Coast Guard cutter.
yeah.
That's a huge difference between an Arleigh class
Yeah.
Burke destroyer, right? I mean, I mean that's not a very it's not a lot of demonstration of American naval power, is it? So the question is about the U.S. announced today it's sending the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Dallas to the Black Sea. It's not exactly the Roosevelt, which is an Arleigh class Burke destroyer. I mean, Ukraine will always appreciate any type of U.S. contribution, but a Coast Guard cutter is not exactly a deterrent as capable as the Roosevelt.
Yes, sure. It's of course it's destroyers are preferable if we are speaking about military forward presence and some possibility to deter Russia, but also the U.S. vessel, Coast Guard vessel, is also important because it's a presence of the U.S. territory in the region. Because each vessel has an immunity according to international law. This is also an important aspect. So it means presence here in the Black Sea territory, some part of territory of the United States. It's important signal, important message, and also I think this is element of deterrence.
But does a Coast Guard vessel? It's also subject to a Montreux Convention. That's not what you're. I thought maybe you were trying to allude to the point that a Coast Guard vessel's not. A Coast Guard vessel is subject to Montreux, correct?
It's here, Ukraine. It's you can find right now a lot of discussions in terms of Montreux Convention because particular provisions of Montreux Convention doesn't mention what Coast Guard vessel should be equal as a warships. So I understand what probably this ship will follow Montreux Convention, but because this ship has some members of crew who wear uniform and so on. But again, I would say what Montreux Convention, if you would look at Montreux Convention precisely, doesn't mention what this ship should follow, limits like limitations like restrictions like a 21-day at sea and so on.
And so so there is some vagueness with the Coast Guard vessel. You're saying if it applies to Montreux, that's what you're trying to suggest.
Yeah, because Montreux Convention limits presence at the Black Sea. Sorry, non-Black Sea nations warships. I would strap warships up to and auxiliary vessels. Yeah, but with which is an element of war structure or naval structure, let's say. So presence up to 21 days. But you will not find provisions which explain what should be done if Coast Guard vessel will come to the Black Sea region of non-Black Sea nation.
So it's similar. It's similar to the hydrographic vessels, which are exempt under Montreux, right? I mean,
but also here it's some approaches can exist, different approach. For example, if hydrographic vessel belongs to the Navy, it's one way how to count. If this vessel belongs to some civilian organizations or civilian structures of government, it's another thing. So I would stress what the Coast Guard vessel, this is not warship, according to the Montreux Convention, and it should not follow the restriction on this convention.
And
a
U.S. Coast Guard vessel could, in theory, go through the Kerch Straits to visit Mariupol, correct? The Russians should not be able to block it.
Yes, but I think this is a good example and good explanation probably why Russians closed the maritime area near the Kerch Strait up to the end of October, up to the end of this October. So I think they've got some information what it is planning to move in the region of such kind of vessel, and they try to avoid any problems for them. Why they would not allow this ship to move via Kerch Strait. So they closed this area, sea area, Black Sea area near the Kerch Strait, and this is their vision how we can stop this movement, avoid this situation, and so on.
Now, you also have the Sea Breeze NATO exercises are coming up, correct?
Yes, sure.
What's the date?
Yes,
the dates of the Sea Breeze this year? May?
It would be at the end of June, in the beginning of July.
And so that will be a major demonstration for NATO to try to show the flag in the Black Sea with these yearly exercises that have been ongoing for over a decade.
Yeah, I think good options exist in the framework of this annual Sea Breeze exercise. And from my perspective, we can not only train joint groups of NATO and non-NATO states, the Black Sea states, naval assets, naval crews, to improve naval capabilities, but significantly expand the format of these exercises, both militarily and non-militarily, I think. In my opinion, very good opportunities exist at the Shirokalaninsk training range, training polygon. Their troops can train in different compositions and scales. For example, in drones use or anti-amphibious actions and so on. It would be appropriate to practice logistics aspect with the involvement of civilian structures for maintenance of equipment and weapons. I think series exercise is well known, but also this exercise has a very flexible framework what we should use according to changing of security situation in the region, and also to provide some preemptive measures to create some preemptive joint capabilities in the region.
And that's
according to existing framework.
And that's very important. You were, if we look at the Russian military buildup in Crimea, you have mentioned a lot about their improved Russian capabilities on the western coast of Crimea facing Odessa. Now, you were briefly also mentioning the Serpent Island, the island that Ukraine acquired at the end of the Second World War, which is off the coast of Romania. You've explained before that there's a danger to that island because of the Russian oil and gas rigs have been moving into those channels that could interfere with shipping to Odessa. So can you just explain why Serpent Island is important to U.S. strategy or to Ukrainian strategy, why we need to be worried about it, and what are the Russians doing on the western side of Crimea with that improvement in some of their military facilities there?
It's well known that Russia occupied gas platforms between Serpent Island and Crimea. And now it's last Western platform, again, occupied by Russia. It's just a couple dozen kilometers from, located a couple dozen kilometers from from Serpent Island. So, now exists only a narrow maritime route for international shipping between Serpent Island and last occupied by Russia platform, gas platform Tavrida, equipped by special operation forces, Russian special operation forces, radars, sonars, and so on. And in some favorable for Russia situation, they can block maritime shipping there. And of course, it would be a tragedy for Odessa, port hub for Mykolaiv and Kherson.
So what you're saying is that Russia could impose a naval blockade
yes.
on Ukraine in the Black Sea, and the West wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. And also, in this regard, of course, Serpent Island is important for Russia. Also, other aspect is what the Serpent Island is located in the vicinity of Danube River, and some equipment, military equipment deployed there can control all shipment there and also control situation, maritime situation there. And also a third aspect, what is also important, it's a lot of gas on the shelf are there. And Russia also could want to occupy this area in the vicinity of Ukraine's coastline to provide gas for Crimea and for to cover their needs.
We've seen a tremendous Russian buildup in Crimea with 50,000 men or more, 100,000 on your borders. Can Russia indefinitely keep this type of force presence in Crimea with the shortage of water supplies that they have? How are they going to be able to keep their forces in Crimea supplied and ready for the next month? Or can they keep doing this indefinitely? Or at some point, do they have to send these guys back to their bases in Russia?
Yeah, my answer is they can stay for a long time in such number of forces there in Crimea because Russian brigade of material technical support was deployed in Apuk training range near Theodosia. This brigade, together with Crimea facilities capable to provide logistic support for the field army. It's about 40,000 troops. Naval facilities, storages, and supply systems in Sevastopol, Donoslav, and Theodosia can provide support to all naval assets already deployed in Crimea. Yes, if you ask me about water, yes, it's freshwater shortage in Crimea. It's will influence on that. But I think and the can see this, what for Russian authorities, it will be first priority to provide water for troops, not for civilian population. And
but where will they get the water? Where will they get the water? Where will they get the water to supply their forces in Crimea?
They can deliver as they did before by railway, the Kerch Bridge to military facilities to deploy forces there. And I don't see any benefits. On the other hand, I don't see any benefits for Russia in returning home forces already redeployed in Crimea. Most likely they will remain in the peninsula. I think it's if they are speaking about water, water supply water supply in Crimea. I think what just water is not the topic of Dnipro water supply to the peninsula is used by Kremlin not as a way to give water to the civilian population, but as an excuse for Russia's military advance in Ukrainian coastal region.
So it's more
Moscow stakes are much higher.
In other words, the water problem is not acute.
I think Moscow stakes are much higher than just Dnipro fresh water. If in any aspect, Kremlin authorities talk about Ukraine, what means the West, and first of all, the United States.
Now you mentioned in your Eurasia Daily Monitor article from yesterday, the April 27th, you mentioned that in that article that the Kremlin could have built a desalination plant in Crimea with the cost of this military buildup. So what you were trying to say is that the economic cost, if it really was about water, they could have already used the money instead of sending all these military forces from the Caspian, from the Baltic to Crimea. They could have invested that and built a desalination plant in Crimea, right? That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah, sure. For billions of rubles. Yeah, for billions of rubles, what Russia spent for this troops deployment was possible to build a seawater desalination facility in Crimea, in Yalta. It's the south part of Crimea, with a capacity of at least 20,000 cubic meters per day, or to restore the peninsula sleeve of the North Crimean Canal, which is needed for water supply. But we see that Moscow has the question like that. They will provide enough water for deployed military forces, for troops. It's no doubtfully, undoubtedly, and we'll use the water supply issue for further deployments, for further activities, military and hybrid activities in the region. So this is not the aim from my perspective to provide water for a civilian population. And this is aimed to occupy, first of all, to occupy southern part of Ukraine, and of course after that to use water. But this is first of all, this is element of creation of so-called Russian Novorossiya implementation, so-called Russia-Novorossiya project, from my perspective.
So this is all still part of the Novorossiya project that Putin started with 2014.
Yeah, sure.
Invasion of
I think so. I think so. I think so.
And do you think that Ukraine going forward, that they're going to give more emphasis on the southern direction than they've given prior to these recent events, that they will look at this? Do you think the continental mentality in the Ukrainian military will continue, or are some people now saying, look, we really need to be ready for a maritime attack. We need to invest resources in our Navy. Do you think that's going to change, or do you think it's going to stay the same?
From my point of view, some changing exists, but mostly it's still land-centric mentality of Kiev, and of course we should change this approach. But on the other hand, you can see a lot of discussions among experts, representatives of civil society, in terms of what we should pay more attention to maritime, our sovereign maritime waters, our exclusive economic zone, and we should provide necessary measures to protect our sovereign maritime territories. I think it's not easy process, but some improvement exists, some steps continues to be done, and I think what we after which last redeployment of Russian troops and forces in Crimea and in adjacent sea waters, I think what Kiev's top leadership should learn such lessons of this redeployment and pay more attention to creation of capable, but at the same time cost-effective naval capabilities to protect our sovereign maritime territories, maritime waters. In both seas, in both fields.
Do you
in
think
the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea?
Do you think there's more support in the Rada for Ukrainian Navy today, this year, than there have been before? Or is it appears that the Rada has more recognition of the importance of the Navy than, say, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, I see for example, some improvements in Russia approach to this. For example, separate maritime committee was created in the Rada, and this committee tried to be proactive, tried to first of all to better understand our advantages of our maritime territories, advantages of so-called maritime approach, and on the other hand to provide necessary measures to protect such territories. But from my perspective, this is not enough. First of all, Ukraine should create structure, influenceable structure, naval structure, naval HQ in Kiev, which should cover at least three aspects: of development of our naval forces, training and education, and of course resources, government resources for such developments. And of course this HQ should have a close contact with Rada, with government, with cabinet of ministers, presidential administration, to provide quick and effective approach. Secondly, I think we should concentrate our efforts on, again, creation of mosquito fleet according to Naval Strategy 2035, because in this strategy, it was mentioned as a first priority up to 2030, and we should implement it, nothing more. And third,
yeah, and the third point, go ahead and finish your third point.
And third, I think this should, in the level of national security and defense or other structure, government structure, create some kind of group or committee or some body which will be responsible for coordination of different activities, government and activities in maritime, in internal waters as well, to provide comprehensive approach. Again, how we can get more benefits what we possess of such resources, our internal and waters and maritime waters, littoral waters, as well as to provide needed measures to protect them.
And what you were saying in your first point that many of our listeners do not know is that the Navy headquarters for the Ukrainian Navy is actually located in Odessa.
Yes, sure.
And the Navy has, for a long period of time, been asking, if not demanding, that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense relocate the headquarters to Kiev so that it could have more influence politically on the government and on the Rada. But the government, the Ministry of Defense, keeps refusing, or should I say the CHOD, the Chief of the General Staff, keeps refusing this.
Yes, unfortunately, we still have, let's say, second army staff. I mean, general staff. They are in general staff. We don't have a top rank admirals or officers who can represent interests of our naval forces. So this is some aspect what we should implement as a NATO standard as well, because in NATO states which connect with sea waters, they have the influenceable representation in general staff, in top structures. This is what we should implement.
Yes, I think what you're saying is that the many Ukrainian Ministry of Defense officials give lip service to NATO standards, but they don't really, at the end of the day, do anything to introduce NATO standards. They always aspire for NATO status and NATO membership, but it's really kind of empty words.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, this is a question of culture, military culture. We should change this post-Soviet or former Soviet culture that exists up to now, unfortunately. And of course, we should not only speak about implementation of NATO standards, but do the right things. Right things means to change many organizational, administrative, operational, and so on aspects in our armed forces to be really interoperable with NATO states forces. Because we are speaking about standards, I think it's not correct approach. It's better and we should speak on interoperability, real interoperability, when on different levels of chain of command we can speak Ukrainian and NATO states can speak between each other without, interpreter, without just as a friends.
You mean
as a colleagues?
They need to speak English. That's what you're trying to say.
Sure.
Instead of waiting for a translator to interpret everything.
Translation and so yeah. Speaking English, yeah, sure, and understand each other as a friends, as a colleagues.
It also reflects a mindset. When they speak English, it also reflects a Western mindset and approach.
Absolutely agree with you. English communication skills are vitally important for Ukrainian, not only naval forces, but for Ukrainian armed forces. It's not the question about some generals or officers who possess some skills, communication skills in English. It's a question of total, knowledge of total amount of, first of all, key persons, top leadership. All top leadership should have communication skills, at least of on a Stanak 3 level. This is the first, I think, what we should implement if we are speaking about NATO standards or about interoperability.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. The buildup in Crimea indicates it's going to be a long, hot summer for Russian forces there, and we'll keep our eyes focused on Crimea and the Black Sea region. And your voice, Admiral Kabanenko, has been a very powerful voice on advocating the importance of the Navy dimension to the Black Sea security for Ukraine. And we want to thank you for participating. We thank everybody for watching today. And we look forward to having you again, because this issue with the Black Sea and Crimea is far from over. So thank you again for participating.
Thank you very much.
And we wish all our viewers, always in our concluding segments of the show, we want to wish you happy trails.
Keep moving, 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 though they're disapproving. Keep them doggies moving.